Hi, and welcome to Waiting on the Most High, where we talk about losing weight, whether it's physical pounds, the weight of the world, unnecessary relationships, or just things that aren't serving you anymore. So, thank you for joining me, and let's talk. So, I got some plants, right? Vegetable plants. They were given to me about a month ago, and I was watering them because I've always wanted to start a garden. I actually tried to start one before, maybe about 3 years ago, and I bought my soil and all of my tools and everything. I planted them, and they started to sprout little flowers that were really doing well. Then I found out I got moles in my yard, and they ate everything from underneath the ground. And I went outside and just little holes all throughout my yard. I'm like, what is this? And so that was discouraging, right? But I was like, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to have raised garden beds because I just don't feel like dealing with the moles. I don't want to do an extermination or anything like that. So I'll just do raised garden beds. I got these plants about a month ago, watering them. I actually bought a raised garden bed. I was ready, but I never put it together. And although I continued to water my plants, they were outside, they actually started to grow. They ended up dying. And even though I'm not a gardener and I don't have a garden, I haven't planted anything before successfully and actually grown anything, I've done a lot of research. And one thing I knew that would possibly happen is that my plants would die if I didn't repot them. Because as they grow, their roots grow, they need to expand their environment. And then I started to think just about life, right? And how often we're in a state of growth and we're growing and we need to change our environment. So, me being the thinker that I am, I started to remember the times in my life where I was actually raised with a concept. Shout out to my mama, but I have to disagree with how this thought process was taught to me about how just changing your environment isn't going to change the things around you. It's not going to make a difference. Whatever situation you're in, whatever it is you're going through, it won't necessarily change just because you change your environment. But nature shows us, and a lot of things that we can learn just about life and about ourselves, whether it's our obedience to the Most High, whether it's about our relationships with our family and friends, you can definitely look at nature because there's nothing but obedience in nature. Nature can't go against what it was naturally created to do. While we are a species to where we have free will and we think and we come up with these different ideas and processes to where disobedience does occur. But looking at nature and looking at my plants, I realized that a change of environment was absolutely necessary for my plants and my vegetables to actually thrive and become what they're expected to be. And a lot of times in our lives, we're sitting in the same place and we're expecting our growth to be seen in the physical, and it just can't because we aren't allowing ourselves to expand and grow and reach the places that we're supposed to reach unless we actually change our environment. And I also, looking at nature, I tend to go to the scriptures and look at the lives of our ancestors and how God blessed them and what their process was in order to get those blessings. When I thought about having to have a change of environment in order to reach your potential, I thought about Abraham and how God just told him to move. He didn't tell him where to go. He didn't know how he was going to get there or how long it would take, any extra details. But God said, you have to move. God had a promise for Abraham, a huge promise, that he would be the father of many nations, that his generations would be more than the stars in the sky. So God knew you can't do this here. You can't grow to that capacity in the environment that you're in. It has to change. And also, once he got to that environment, to the land of Canaan that was promised to him, he had his family with him and his cousin Lot was with him, right? And Abraham and Lot had developed or gained many riches, a lot of cattle, a lot of men that work with them in order to manage the family and the crops and the cattle that they had acquired along the way. So then there had to be another change of environment, because the Most High knew that Abraham, who I had given this promise to, won't be able to thrive in this environment along with Lot. So then Lot had to move so that Abraham could continue to expand and continue to grow where he is. And I found myself in a position to where my life is changing a lot. There's a change in how my family structure is set up. I am actually having to move out of my home and find another home. And all of that is bringing a lot of anxiety. I don't like to move. I don't mind change. I just don't like when it's not going at a pace in which I can actually process what's happening. It's just things are just happening. And it's like I feel like I'm catching up with what's going on. But at the same time, I think it's a mindset of not accepting that I just have to change my environment. Same thing with my plants. They could have still been growing had I just put them in a bigger pot. If I was still just being too lazy to build my garden bed, which I should have just done that. But knowing the importance of the environment, of your soil, the environment in which that you're planting these seeds. And so often we expect great things. We expect God to do and move in great ways in our lives, and we just won't do our part. We get complacent. We have anxiety, and we worry about what it will look like to others, how things will seem, if it doesn't make sense. And a lot of times we just have to sit in where we are and take a look around and say, hey, is where I am actually conducive to who I want to be? Even if you can't afford where you're going, even if you don't know where you're going. Abraham was clueless into where he was going, but God led him every step of the way. And I know that a lot of times when you talk about blind faith and just moving and doing things according to his will, it can get kind of cloudy because it's a lot of voices in our heads. I don't know about y'all, but I talk to myself. I know we were all raised to think that like that's crazy, but it's not. I'm processing my thoughts. I'm deciphering on whether these are my thoughts, whether these are God's promises, or if it's the enemy speaking against what God has already promised me. So processing all of that, taking the time to evaluate where you are. And if where you are does not align with where you're trying to go, you got to change it. My plants were trying to grow. They were trying to thrive. The leaves had gotten so rich and beautiful, and the flowers started to bud. And of course, I didn't see any crop coming through yet because they were freshly planted vegetables. But not changing that environment, not getting a bigger pot to put them in, not building my water bed, not moving the soil around so that the roots can actually move and grow how they were expected to grow, I would have never been able to see a crop. It was no chance that that plant could have actually thrived, regardless of what it was designed to do. Those vegetables were never actually going to grow if I never changed the environment they were in. And we have to connect that to ourselves. Regardless of what God promised you, it can never come to fruition if you don't evaluate where you are, move in obedience, and change your environment. It's going to be some people along the way that you're just not going to be able to take with you. Certain relationships, certain habits and mindsets that are going to have to change. And it's hard. It is very difficult to maneuver through all of that. And for me, I'm doing that, starting a business, raising children, processing a life that's without a partner. I'm doing things by myself. It's nerve-wracking. It's mind-blowing that I'm actually doing it and that I am in a space of knowing that, hey, things are just going to have to change. Things are going to have to look different. And it doesn't matter what my intentions are, what my desires are, or again, what God even promised me if I'm not obedient and move to change my environment. So just encouraging all of you who are having to change things, who are having to move, whether it be your job setting, taking that plunge to reach a new height in your career, or if it is physically moving to another state or another city, if it's about moving out of your parents' home and finding your own space, to find your own lane and moving your own way, all of that, no matter what level it is, no matter how old you are or how long you've been complacent, the difference between us and the plants is that God gives us grace and mercy every day so that we do have an opportunity to wake up and instantly make a change. Nothing that we want to do and who we're striving to be depends on anyone else, right? The plants' lives depended on me and what I would do with them, how I would produce for them. But what I want only depends on me. What you want only depends on you. So you have to move according to his will and what's promised for you. Change your environment without fear. And even if you are afraid, it's okay. Just trust and understand that in your obedience, everything that is promised to you will always come to you. And it takes patience. You know, it's a lot that we can see for ourselves and we expect for ourselves. And it's like, I can reach it. I know I can. And you got all this zeal and excitement to get things done. But it's like, when is it going to happen? I really feel like I've been in the same spot for the past 3 years. Although there are things that are changing, there are mindsets and old thoughts that I am breaking and finding new ways to navigate through life, but it still feels like physically, whether it's financially or just what things look like, it's not changing. So I'm excited to actually change my environment, to actually move and do something different than what I've been doing and see what comes about. See what flowers bloom from that. See what vegetables and things that I produce from my change in my environment. And I hope that any of you out there who are having to make a change and move and grow and expand who you are and how you view things, that you just keep God in mind and just stay encouraged. So the affirmations that I would like to keep in my mind throughout this week as I'm thinking about growth and expansion and changing my environment is, I will move according to God's will, regardless of how much I don't understand what's happening. I trust him. I am reaching new heights and I am expanding to someone new. And I am always keeping my heart in a place of love and acceptance for what God has planned for me. Stay encouraged, don't give up, and just keep moving. And have a great week.